All right. What's up, everybody? This is Ryan here, and you are watching what is effectively the new edition of my live streams. So, we're just going to jump right into it here. How I got hired as a mobile developer in a terrible job market. And so, originally, when I was going to do this sort of talk or presentation, I was going to go through just a whole bunch of different steps, all the way from like the initial process of like applying for jobs down to interview prep and stuff like that. And I realized that was just way too much to sort of pack into an hour-long lesson and still have a bit of time for Q&A should anyone actually watch this live. So what I thought I would do instead is I'll probably do a couple live streams which talk about different aspects of getting a job. And today I wanted to start with sort of the first steps, which is finding jobs and applying jobs. And we'll go as far as like talking about how to write introductory emails. And then that's pretty much where I'm going to stop for today, most likely. We'll just kind of see how far I get. I do have some loosely scripted notes, but as you'll learn if you're new to watching me, most of what I do is pretty unscripted and from personal experience, so I can tend to ramble. Anyways, so let's get started with part one of what I want to talk about, which the title I have here is Volume is Key. Hey, what's up, Kobena? I'm doing pretty well. Crappy sleep last night, but it is what it is. Very happy to be streaming again, and I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining me on the stream. So the first sort of heading that I wanted to talk about is volume is key when it comes to job hunting. Let me go ahead and underline that if I can remember the hotkey. So what does this mean? And the way that I want to start by explaining this is that so at the start of this year, I had spent, I think it was 8 months in what was effectively my first professional role as an Android developer. Although I had a lot of other kind of experience before that, it was mostly working on my own projects. But I had started, I had been working full-time as a salaried Android developer for a company. And that particular company, I'm not going to go into much detail about it, but basically the whole mobile department was laid off at once. And so I'm familiar with the experience of getting a request to talk to some managers at the start of the day and being, somewhat politely told that you no longer have a job. So what I'm going to talk about is how I went from that to my current role, which I'm really enjoying, and the different steps that I took. So the first and most important thing when it comes to getting hired, whether you got laid off or you're looking for your first job or whatever, is volume. And when I say volume, this word in English, I know a lot of my viewers are ESL, but volume doesn't necessarily just mean like audio volume. It can mean like the amount of something. Like, let's take a simpler example. Let's say I was doing a whole bunch of push-ups. 20 push-ups is a higher volume than 10 push-ups. So that's what this word means in this context. So basically what I did is by the time that I had been laid off for 48 hours, I had already applied to 8 new positions. So this is to give you an idea, within, it was actually less than 48 hours, but the day after my whole team was laid off, I had applied to 8 different positions, and I'll talk about the different sites that I used to apply to these different positions. So what I kind of did is I followed this pattern which goes like this. I start with the roles that I want. So here we're talking about companies that I would prefer to work for. And then from there, as time progresses, I get less and less picky about the roles. So basically what this means is when you start looking for a job, what you're going to want to do is look for the companies that you would actually want to work for. And if you're not really sure about that, I don't know, you kind of have to just get some more experience in the industry. But really what you're going to want to look for is some kind of balance between having a good work-life balance, a decent salary. Those are, to me, the most important things. There's companies out there which will pay you garbage, which isn't really fair. The first job I was ever offered as an Android developer, this was back in 2016, the company actually offered me minimum wage, and I rejected that offer because it was totally ridiculous. So, but the point is here, you want to start with the positions which have the things that you want: the work-life balance, the hours, the pay, the infrastructure, the number of users in their application. Those sorts of things are what you want to be paying attention to. As the weeks went by, I had to get less and less picky about the roles that I was applying to. Fortunately for me, one of the roles that I had applied to in that first 48 hours did eventually end up getting back to me, and that actually happens to be the company that I work for today, which I'm quite happy with. So to finish off this first part, let me just see how long I've been rambling for, 7 minutes. To finish off this first part here, the most important thing, in my opinion, when it comes to job hunting in general is you're going to have to apply to a huge number of different places, almost certainly, unless you have some kind of connections. And you're going to have to, I'll talk more about this later, but you're going to have to accept that you're probably going to get a huge number of rejections, and you're going to have to learn to be resilient about that and not let that bother you. Anyways, so that was part one, is just volume is key. Part two is where to find jobs, which is something else. So when I say this, I have to be specific here. So I live in North America, Canada specifically, and I was applying to Canadian and North American remote jobs. So the advice I'm going to give here might be partially location specific, but not all of it will be. So the first one I want to talk about here is LinkedIn is a great place to find job postings. I don't have a paid LinkedIn account or a premium account. I just use the regular one, and I'm not paid or incentivized to explain this to you, but the most recent role that I got, I did find that through LinkedIn. They have a very good job board, and they have a lot of good postings, and it's pretty easy to search. And I'll talk in the next Monday, I'll talk about sort of making yourself presentable and marketing yourself to employers. So LinkedIn is cool for that because it's both a way for you to find postings and also a quick way to sort of build a portfolio. So definitely something you want to think about. Another thing that I personally use, so I didn't use this to get my current role, but the role before was Indeed, or Indeed.com. Now, full disclosure here, Indeed is quite popular in North America. I have no idea how popular it is in Asia or the Middle East or Africa or Europe. I know it's like a worldwide company, but to be honest, I don't know how your mileage is going to be when it comes to these other locations. But if you're looking for a remote job or an on-site job in North America, Indeed is a very good place to look. A lot of companies will be using Indeed. The next thing you can do is, so you can look for local job boards. So, for example, I live in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, which has a pretty large tech scene. And there are a number of websites or organizations even, which are basically job boards for tech jobs. So if you happen to live in a company which has a tech scene, that's another thing that you could look into. And you don't even need to necessarily like apply through the job board. You can use all of these different approaches as a way to find the hiring page for the company itself or something like that. You can even look for past roles, for example, and use that as a way to find different companies that you're interested in. I think I had a couple other options here. Yeah, one other thing that I want to suggest here is consider writing introductory emails to companies even if they don't have active postings. Let's try and write English properly here. And the reason why you might want to do this is a couple things. For starters, depending on the size of the company, posting jobs can actually be pretty expensive, and some companies won't actually advertise that they have positions open very frequently. You could also get really, really lucky. Maybe as you send that email, one of their team members has just put in notice or something like that. And then the other thing you can do is you can just start to network with the hiring managers for a particular company or the HR people, for example. So these are basically the different options that I use. Another big one you could use is just look on, this one should be obvious to you, but look on hiring pages for companies. Most companies will have like a jobs or a careers thing, or a join our team, or something like that. Oftentimes it's down in the sitemap in the bottom. And this is another way that you can find postings or contact information for how to get roles. So yeah, let's move on to the next one, which is actually the last topic that I wanted to ramble about here, which is writing a good introductory email. And this is something I've had to practice over a long time. And I have kind of a pattern or a template that I follow that has worked really well for me. So first I'll give you what that template is. And then what I'll do is I'll give some hints about how to structure or phrase these sorts of emails, at least for a North American hiring audience, because there are some sort of nuances that might help you fit in a little bit. So let me share first the general structure. So the first paragraph, and so keep in mind, this is a template that I've used for years now, and it's worked pretty well for me. You can make small variations on it, but if you don't have a template like this, then I really suggest you find some repeatable method. And oftentimes I'll actually copy paste most of these letters and then just kind of fill in the details, although make sure you fill in the details properly if you're going to do that. So the first paragraph introduces yourself and how you found the position. And this is pretty standard advice. Now, you're not going to give a huge, long, biographical, chronological introduction. In what I suggest to you is you basically say, like, hello, my name is Ryan, and I'm an Android developer in blah. I found your posting on blah, LinkedIn, Indeed, or whatever, and am interested in this role. Bye. Sorry, just saying bye to my girlfriend who's off to go save lives. She's a doctor. So, anyways. Yeah, so the first paragraph introduces yourself and how you found the position. And like I say, don't talk too much. As you've probably noticed if you're watching this, talk a lot. And I also tend to be quite verbose when I'm writing. This is not something where you want to be sharing too much information. Less is more here, just the highlights. So in the second paragraph, I like to explain what interests me about the company or position or team or whatever. And look, let's be honest here. Maybe this is like the 16th job that you've applied to this, week or something like that. And there's not a lot about this particular company that you're actually that excited about. You don't have to be super specific here or expand on things too much, but this is more like if you have a company that is like a good quality company or a high caliber, and they do have reasons why you're interested in that job apart from just salary, then absolutely, like, explain a little bit about it. So for example, my most recent company, part of what they do is work with a company that does medical education, my partner is a doctor, and so that was one thing I was able to kind of seize on and say, like, my partner happens to be a doctor, and I would love to be able to participate in the medical field in some kind of thing. So yeah, that's just kind of the general advice there is explain why you're interested in the job, if at all possible. And that could be like, I'm looking to expand my experience. I'm looking to get, work with a company or an app that has a solid user base. You might have to be a little bit creative depending on what you're doing here. Third paragraph. I like to explain why I would be a good fit, and I'm for the team. And so I'm not necessarily going to be like super, the English expression would be on the nose, and I have a big nose, as you can see. I'm not going to be like too direct, like, here's why I would be a good fit, bullet points. I've seen that said now and again to, use bullet points in certain contexts. And yeah, in some contexts, like particularly after you've gotten the job and you're communicating with people, sometimes bullet points is good, but when you're writing an introductory email, I don't necessarily suggest it. But yeah, third paragraph, I like to explain why I would be a good fit for the team. So here you can briefly talk about your experience. You can maybe talk about some skills you have or something in a previous role or a previous project which is relevant. I don't have a whole lot more to say there. Just try to figure out, like, how can you sort of market yourself? What do you think the hiring manager or the team would be interested in? And this can be tricky. This can be something that kind of comes with time and practice and getting feedback from different companies about what you could have done better. But those are sort of the general things you want to think about. And then let's see. And so fourth paragraph is basically just some links to the most important work examples or portfolio items, highlights. So what could we be talking about here? A LinkedIn page is a great thing to include here. You don't want to approach this like the introductory email is your resume. Don't do that. Keep it brief, and I recommend just stick to these specific things and do like maybe 3 or 4, max 5 sentences for each of these paragraphs, and don't really go beyond that. And what you're trying to do here is you want to ask yourself this question. Ask yourself, what do I want the employer to see? What do you think, in terms of your past experience or projects or whatever, do you think they would be interested in? And again, keep it really brief. Like, each relevant link should probably be explained in like a second. So in my case, I do a lot of content creation. I've written like 40 articles and had a number of published articles. I've done hundreds of hours of live streaming. I've done over 300 videos at this point, so I have a lot of content. I have a lot of stuff on my GitHub, like probably over 50 projects at this point. I have a couple published applications. So those are the sorts of things that you're going to want to highlight. Again, it'll depend on what job you're applying for. Obviously, I'm a mobile developer, so most importantly, I'm going to be pointing them to published applications I have, hopefully, the ones that have at least a couple users. But it could be other things like hobby projects that are relevant, like writing a compiler front end in Kotlin or something like that, for example. So yeah, that's basically, these are the practical tips that I have for you. Just to summarize, volume is key. Expect to send out many applications. Expect to get many rejections. Even if you're a relatively experienced candidate, that's pretty normal. I talked about different places to find jobs. These are my general recommendations. LinkedIn is great. Indeed is great for at least North America. Consider local job boards. And go to the websites, the web applications of the companies you want to work for, and look for jobs or careers or join our team type pages. And how to write a good introductory email. And the last thing I'll ramble about is expect lots of rejections. This is normal. Unless you have connections or something like that. Maybe your uncle or your friend, your good buddy or your dad works for the company, and it's not going to be that difficult for you. But for most of us, it's actually going to be kind of difficult to get a position.